Hello, Deliciat. Just gonna wait for a few more people to join. A bit late, but it's alright. Hello, well, thank you for joining us. Hi, Tim, man. Thanks for joining us. Arus. Cartier. Hello. How are you guys doing? How is everybody doing? Thank you for joining. So we'll start in just a minute. Just gonna wait for a few more people to join us, and then we can start with the conversation. But yeah, I hope everybody's excited for this today's topic. I think it's a good one, one that's very important, especially now. And yeah, so let's see if we can get to 10. No, let's start with 11 or 12 people. Then we'll get started. Okay, just two more. Then, but just to begin, if you are new to Vugana Tuesday, we do this every Tuesday. We have a different topic every Tuesday, and sometimes we have different hosts. Or just events. Even we've held a fundraising concert as part of Tuvugane Tuesday. So if you ever have a topic that you would like us to discuss, or if you want to host one of these discussions, please don't be afraid to contact us. So basically, the reason for today's discussion, I think, if you are Burundian, you probably have heard this a lot, where you get asked, why are Burundian men so aggressive? Why are Burundian men cheaters? This, that, and I think that comes from a point where there is, I want to call it a misunderstanding. There is a lack of understanding about the power, the power balances within our culture, but also within some of the traditions that we've inherited over time. And so I think there's a lot of phrases that even go with some of those discourses, and so forth. So there is a lack of understanding from outside, but there's also a lack of understanding from within, and that is one of the reasons why we decided to we decided to have this topic for today. So we have 3 guests today, actually, that will be helping us unpack this very, very important but also strong topic. So I'm not going to speak too much on what the relevance is. Hopefully some of our guests will help us understand what's the relevance for this specific discussion, and why we're having it today. So I am gonna get started and bring our first guest. Shadia, if you are here, please send me a request. Um, it says that you are unable to join. So please send me a request and then we can get started. I would like to start with her and see how we can begin the discussion. But before she sends a request, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today. And I hope that please, in the comments, don't be afraid. This is a safe space. The main point for Tuvugen Tuesday is to have open and honest conversations. And so hopefully we can do that today, because I think in a lot of times in the discussions that we have, we like that. Okay, she is here. Let's get started. Just waiting. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Ni mwili wetu ni mwaramutse.
It's
Okay.
It's 4 p.m.
Okay, good. Yeah. It's not too late or too early, so good.
No, I was having issues because I was on my laptop and I thought I could do it, but then I realized that I can't. I've never done this before.
Yeah, Instagram doesn't let you.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with introductions. I'm sure you have not been on our live before. I think a lot of people may not know you. So let's start with introduction. But specifically for me, there's one introduction that I would love to hear, and it's to explain your Twitter handle, slowly decolonizing, and what that means. I would love to hear that.
Slowly decolonizing. So I chose that because, man, you're putting me on the spot. So now I have to so I grew up in a normal Burundian family. So there's like a lot of like expectations in terms of gender roles, in terms of faith and religion, like your typical, family. And so, but then I've always been a curious person. And the more I learn, the more I realize that there's a lot of conditioning that happened in my life, in my head, that is definitely incorrect and that is harmful, not just to me, but also to other people around me. So what I've been working on, I would say in the past, since I was 18, that it's been 8 years, I've been intentionally unlearning. And I know I said family, but it's also society and culture and the things that I learned in school, because even our education is colonized. So all of that stuff, like basically like removing one thing at a time, and that is what I call decolonizing. And I added slowly because it's been a long process, and you never really get there. Like I don't think I will ever finish decolonizing for as long as these powers exist.
Hey, that's the way. Burundian map like to say Burundi and then walk. And so they need to give you that title already.
Yeah.
But that was a selfish request of me because I was so curious. But please go ahead and introduce yourself in any other way that you feel comfortable for everybody else.
Okay. So my name is Shadia. I am 26 years old. I live in the United States in a state called Idaho. Not a lot of people know where that is, but it's in the northwest of the United States. It's like 98% white, very still kind of like backwards in terms of like progress, social progress. But the town I live in, it's called Boise. It's the capital city. It's more diverse. We have a lot of refugees here, some from Burundi and Tanzania and Rwanda and DRC. So that's as much diversity as I get here, which is amazing. But I do miss home and just, you know, this kind of community that what we're doing right now.
Right.
I came here for college and ended up seeking asylum in 2015 with everything that was going on. I got scared to go back home, and I was granted asylum last year, and so and this year is my 5th year in the United States. I have 3 siblings, all younger than me. And that's it. And my degree in college was anthropology and sociology. So I have a tendency to just be interested in these topics that are related to culture and inequality and, you know, how to make society better.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually discovered you, and is it Oris or Oris? If you
Oris,
can,
yeah.
Oris. Okay.
Yeah.
So we give ransom around noon. But I discovered you guys while I was preparing for this live, and I'd initially planned to have 2 guests, but then I came across your podcast on this exact topic, and I'm gonna allow you to do a little bit publicity, yeah, to the Kumwe, your podcast. And so I discovered your podcast, and you're talking about the same topic, and I was like, you know what, like I need to bring these people on. But could you discuss a little bit about the Turi Kumwe and that podcast?
Yeah. So Turikumye was initially an initiative of King Florica Burundi and Laure. And Laure is actually here. She's watching on the Turikumye account. And they wanted to have a platform for Burundian artists and where they can like share and connect with other people, and I don't know, a space like this one, but just for artists. And well, I was on Twitter minding my business, tweeting controversial things, and then King found me, and he was like, "Listen, I want you to join us and start working with us on this." And so I was like, I don't know, man. I've never done this. And, you know, and I also don't really have interest in art like that. So I don't feel like I would have a lot to contribute. And he was like, no worries. Like, just talk about whatever you want to talk about. And so since then, I was like, sure, if, you know, there's space for error and all that stuff, I'm down to do it. So I started doing it. And so since then, more people have joined. We have Stacy and Jerry. They haven't done any episodes yet, but they will soon. And so now we have more episodes on culture and society than we do about art. So now we were like, let's expand this. We have more people, which means we have more interest. We're going to keep the art stuff, but we also want to add more discussions around our culture. And so Horus, I had never talked to Horus until that we started, you know, thinking about doing that episode. And originally we were just going to unpack on the previous episode on being queer and Burundian. And I was like, okay, Horus, let's just start meeting and figure out what we want to talk about. And we started meeting. And slowly he was like, can we just do toxic masculinity? And I was like, what? Because I had never heard a Burundian guy say those words. Like, yeah, I want to, and he wasn't defensive. And he was like, yeah, I am toxic and I am unlearning that, like, which I can relate to because I have my own toxic traits, maybe not masculine toxic traits, but I do. So I can relate to wanting to unlearn a lot of toxic things that we were taught as kids. So Turikume, go follow on Instagram, on Twitter. Yeah.
And the different podcasts, I guess stations that allow it, you know, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, which other ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but all that sounds great because like we kind of do the same thing here on Tuvugane Tuesday. Every Tuesday we discuss a different issue, mostly social and cultural issues. So
we're gonna confuse people with our names sounding so similar.
I know to the community.
Yeah.
No, I think it's all the same, and I think we're we all contributing our small part within this whole thing called development. So kudos to you guys. Um, so I want to dive back into the topic because it's just like you said, you never heard a Burnian man utter those words. Later on, I want to kind of get your opinion on why that is. But before we do that, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit once again, as you as an anthropologist. If you could help us sort of kind of define toxic masculinity and the other sort of terms that go with that, like hyper masculinity, or any other terms that go with that topic.
Yeah, okay. So first, I'm not an anthropologist because I don't have a PhD in anthropology. I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't learn about toxic masculinity in school, but I did learn about similar patterns in society.
Uh-huh.
So toxic masculinity is a social mechanism. I think that's important to recognize, that it's not like something that's just for some individuals, like
Mm-hmm.
we can all agree that we live in a patriarchal system in the whole world, in most parts of the world. So that
Mm-hmm.
means that men make choices for everybody else. They make rules, and it's a men's world. And so
Mm-hmm.
as a result of that, that's where you start seeing hyper masculinity, because then being a man is what is aspired to, because that is where power is, that is where strength is, that is where money is, influence.
Mm-hmm.
So boys, as they're growing up, start seeing that that's encouraged. The manlier you are, for as long as we've lived, men have fought each other for lands. They have conquered continents and stuff like that. So that even, like, even just that at the psychological level, what does that do to boys and to men, to
Mm-hmm.
to associate being a man with conquering and violence and having 10 wives and having tons of money and stuff. So when you start seeing those traits as what's encouraged in society and what you should be, then if you find any level of sensitivity in yourself as a young boy, then you start to repress that,
Right.
because that's not what a man is supposed to be like,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start aspiring for those extreme behaviors like violence or whatever it is. And so that is what hypermasculinity is. It's the extreme, like, because being, wanting success in life is not necessarily wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
wanting success at the expense of everybody else, just because you think that that's what being a man is about, that's wrong. So hypermasculinity is increasing the level at which those traits, those traditionally masculine traits, show up in your life, mostly because you're insecure about your own manhood. And so
Mm-hmm.
it starts being toxic when it starts harming yourself and other people. When now you're married and now you start beating your wife because she embarrassed you by talking too much, or your children for silly things, and then
Mm-hmm.
yourself by not allowing yourself um, to be who you want to be, or to be, to express your emotions and stuff like that. So
Right.
um, yeah, so that's how I know that's like all over the place, but that is how I see it. And
Mm-hmm.
toxic masculinity runs really deep because it's, as I said, it's generalized. It's not a trait that's just in you and Horus, or you know, it is a social norm. It is systemic. It's internalized. And
Right.
so, in order for men not to be toxic or not to be hypermasculine, they literally have to go against the most internal, like the dynamics in themselves, like the most
Mm-hmm.
their intuitions, because it's not natural for you not to want to show up in that way as a man.
Yeah, so you're discussing a lot of like the social constructs that actually sort of are learned and kind of like, you know, inherited through, you know, just not only the historical, you know, ways that we've treated or understood masculinity, but also our experiences over time. Um, and I think in your episode you also talk about sort of how uh, you can really talk about like oppression of, you know, of colonizers, and not talk about you know the role that masculinity in the played in that as well. Um, but would you say there's any biological sort of roots in that in those sort of behavior like hypermasculinity at
No.
all?
No. And the reason why I say that is because biology is biology. Biology
Uh-huh.
doesn't have a mind of its own.
Hmm.
Biology is literally decided for you in the womb. So it's not like it's, I mean, if you ask me if we can make links between like hormones and behavior, I will say probably. You know, like what does a lot of testosterone in your body make you do as a person?
Hmm.
Maybe it gives you, you know, more drive. I don't know. Maybe it
Hmm.
makes you hyperactive or things like that. But
Right.
see, those traits are not inherently wrong. But then how we choose to use those things that maybe our biology decides for ourselves is the problem. So we can go back to when humans were living in caves or whatever, and we can, you know, discuss how men had, because men were stronger, you know, physically stronger because of the biology that you're talking about, they would
Hmm.
go hunting and they would do these things that are considered masculine. Um, and so that is like cultural though, so it's the biology led to those decisions that
Hmm.
later turned into something that then we decided is the norm. However,
Uh-huh.
at the time it was created for the survival of people rather than um, you know, let's now own the world because we have more strength, because that wasn't the case. Men had their role, women had their role, and in certain societies that wasn't even the case. Like all of these things were more nuanced than that.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
but the fact that we have gotten to where we are now in the world, and I mean, when we talk about toxic masculinity, we have to acknowledge other like things like femicide. Like women literally get killed like by hundreds, by thousands every day because of toxic
Hmm.
masculinity. So it becomes less about, oh, he won't let me hang out with you girls because he wants me to stay at home past this time. It because literally women are dying. So how can you explain that as biology? You can't. You can't reasonably do that. It has to be how we have evolved from necessity to, yeah, now we're gonna be greedy and just, you
Hmm.
know, take over.
Yeah. Well, Shadia, thank you so much for helping me kind of like look at the basics on like what, you know, what's, you know, toxic masculinity looks like and, you know, the experiences. I will bring you back on. I want to bring Horus and kind of get his experience and because
All right.
really, I was very, I don't even know the word for it. It's, I really liked basically his experience and how he
Mhm.
described this topic. So let me bring him on, and I'll bring you back so we can discuss on this some more,
Sounds
if
good.
that's okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll be bringing Orus, who was a guest on Shadia's
My
episode
guy.
of Turikumu. Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, how are you?
Karibu kuri tuvugane Tuesday.
Sorry, sorry. I was watching, man. This was. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy.
Uh-huh. And thank
Really,
you for being here.
yeah, yeah. How are you? How are you feeling?
I am doing well, man. It's a nice afternoon. Very it's not too warm, so I'm doing well.
Yeah. Cool,
Yeah.
man.
So Yeah, let's start with introductions. I think since it's the first time I've seen you on Tuvugane Tuesday. So, for those who don't know you, and I also found out that you are a singer.
Yeah.
Um, so let's start with the introductions and who you are, and also your sort of how did you come to start the discussion with Shadia on Turikumwe?
And I think everyone saw Shadia was amazing, and she was so, the episode in itself was amazing because she was so open. But as far as
Uh-huh.
production, my name is Horace Harimana. My artist name is Horace Rayo. Started playing music at the age of 13 ish.
Mm-hmm.
First playing guitar. When I started singing, my friends were like, "Oh, you're not too bad," and then the confidence built from there.
Mm-hmm.
We came in Montreal with my sister. I was 16, she was 14 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And time flies, man. It's been about 10, 11 years now. Um, and ever since, it's just been a journey of trying to, um, Shadia talked about decolonizing, and I thought that was really interesting because we have to unlearn a lot of stuff. And I feel like it's been a journey of unlearning and finally being who I am, if that makes sense. So,
Uh-huh. Right.
yeah, man.
And I think that that's all of ours, progression. We're unlearning and learning new things as we go,
Yeah,
right? And I heard your music. For those who have
hey,
not heard Orusha's music, I'm telling you, please go look him up. You will not be disappointed.
so my
Um,
we on there.
you will not be disappointed,
Thank you.
honestly. But there's one thing though. When I heard your music the first time, I couldn't tell whether you were Burundian or not.
Right.
Um, I think maybe it's because most of your music was in English, but also it's it's unique in a way. I'm not gonna talk too much about it. I'll let people go check it out for themselves. But it's really
Uh,
it's different. It's not what we hear when we think of artists, especially in the diaspora.
yeah, and I'll say a little something about music and how it relates to the journey and the growth. So I
Hmm.
find that when you take an artistic journey, you have two choices, especially in the world that we live in now with social media and everything.
Hmm.
I could either choose to be something that I was not and create a persona that I was not, which
Right.
is basically relates to the whole toxic masculinity and how we and I in my life tended to just fall into this box of, I've seen a lot of people comment on the bad boys and
Hmm.
the feeling of like um, whatever the box of a man was, I try to identify to that, or
Hmm.
actually doing the work into finding who I am and understanding how I'm toxic, understanding what I want to talk about in my music. And that road usually takes a longer time. So I always
Hmm.
say that the music that I'm making now, which hasn't come out yet, is a true reflection of me. And
Hmm.
and you can kind of trace back if you listen to the stuff from 2017 to 2019, you can see the growth in the therapy sessions, right?
Right. Hey, personally, I would love to talk to you some more about your music because I think there's a lot of messages I think we all need to hear.
Yeah.
Um, so hopefully some other time. But just to shift back into the conversation, on the podcast with Shadia, you shared a story of when you were, I think, were you 11 or something like
Yeah.
that, with your mom and how you grew up, and I think uh, it's important to if you are willing to if to touch on that story and how to kind of explore how do you develop these toxic traits and um uh over time and how do you begin to unlearn those traits?
Well, if I can give a metaphor, it's like, let's say you're walking in a hallway and then there's a few doors that seem to be open, and you're just a kid and you're trying to open the door and see what's on the other side. Um,
Uh-huh.
Doors have emotions as labels. So those are emotions. So
Right.
you have the choice to get in and deal with them. But sometimes they're just shut by the people that are close to you. And I think the story is what it is, and it's not something that's done with bad intentions. It's nothing that comes from a bad place, as far as like the sometimes it even comes with love. So for that story, for those who don't know, um, the I feel lucky because I can pinpoint where it started, and
Mm-hmm.
for me it was that day. As far as like understanding that I had to be responsible and self-reliant on my own emotions, that I did not have the luxury of talking about emotions because I had to be tough, or because I had to be handle my business like a man, or things like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm I'll repeat the story. So I was
If you can.
in the kitchen. My mother ran a restaurant, and there was a door that led to the bar. So I used to open the door and go see my aunt. I'm a kid, so I do back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then my aunt was had some customers, like super huge guys. They were just there, and I guess they had too much to drink. They gave me a first warning: don't open the door again. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously I don't listen, so I keep coming in, and at some point, one of them gets mad, pushes me, closes the door, and um, and at that moment, I didn't know how to react or what to do about the
Mm-hmm.
situation, because at that point, I'm still a very sensitive and very emotional person, very just a kid who's very sensitive and emotional. Then my aunt comes running back. She looks at me, she holds me, and as soon as she holds me, I just start sobbing and crying. We go to mom, who's in my mind both the dad and the mom, the protector, everything that I needed, I would get from mom, because well, the parents were separated at a very young age. But the response was, "You, if he was your sister, I would intervene, but because it's you, then you have to deal with it,
Right.
right?" So the expectations were in my mind at the time that I had to just step up for some reason, step up and be a man and all that stuff. Um, Now, there's no resentment for that reaction, because I think it's we have to look as well at the history behind, and we have to look at my granddad. We have to look at everything that happened before, and that was a natural response.
Mm-hmm.
But that what happened after that was, as a kid, I did go through different things that now I felt like I couldn't. I had to deal with it, right? So we talk. There's something I didn't talk about in the episode, which is kind of still difficult to mention, but we talk about things as serious as um, abuse, and things as still serious um, as those topics, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then you feel trapped in this thing where you have to internalize a lot of stuff.
Right.
But then you grow, and you get to an age, you have a couple relationships, you enter the dating stage, and I used to stop and sort of look at my behavior as toxic and say, but I love this person, right? I'm with this person. I love them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I hurting them in this way? Because I would do a lot of introspection and try to understand why I do certain things, why I don't welcome certain things, and why I am who I am. So I started just doing the work into understanding, um, also apologizing to a certain degree. Um, so yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but
Right.
yeah,
And so you talk about apologizing, and I think when you begin to realize some of these things, you find yourself apologizing a lot for your own the behaviors
yeah,
that you notice are being toxic. Um,
yeah,
but I want to dig a little bit more into another story, or I guess another metaphor that Shadia touches on while interviewing you. And I think she says
yeah,
it's a song that talks with being a lion and a lamb. And specifically on that, I want to touch on sort of like the feelings and the attitudes that develop over, the experiences that you have, either as a young person, but also as you are grown and realizing some of the behaviors or traits within yourself.
Well, I'll give you an example. So I feel like when it was sort of like a quote that I saw that I heard, I'll be the lion just so I can be the lamb that I truly am. So I've always felt inside that I was a calm person who did not want conflict, who was just emotional, who was just all these things. But I felt like I had to act, to put on an act and be um, the lion. And I say in the episode, if I'm with my lady and the fight breaks out, I can be the guy to protect. And if I
Protect her.
yeah, and if a fire breaks out, I had to quiet down this anxiety and this emotion, so I can be in the forefront and protect, which slows down the growth that I'm trying to get at as far as like being who I am. So songs, writing is a process that sort of like helps me tell that story.
Hmm.
But uh, but I think mainly when we did the podcast, I wanted people to recognize it first and to kind of like see themselves in the stories that I'm telling, um,
Right.
and start asking questions to themselves and sort of start that journey of growth.
Hmm. So, so with that, you're kind of touching on what Shadia was talking about with the social constructs, but also some of the development of those traits has
Right,
to do with choices that men make.
right.
Do you concur with that? And in what way do you feel the choices that we make in terms of how we choose to deal with certain um, situations or circumstances lead into that toxicity?
Well, I think if I can talk for myself, we don't even really deal with it, right? And that's the main issue. I don't think there's a time where we actually sit down and deal with it. It's more like, grab a beer and just shrug it off and keep walking.
Mhm.
So without dealing with it, we think it's going somewhere, but it's not going anywhere. It just kind of stays in there. And when you find yourself in a relationship with people, it comes out in different little ways. And I did touch on the fact that toxic masculinity affects people differently, or you'll express it differently than I will do. Some with a lot more vigor, some with a lot more. Some people are a lot more vocal, and some it would just be in the behaviors, right? So the
Mhm.
dynamic is one. You don't understand what's happening to you in this moment. You don't understand what you're doing or why you're doing it or why you're being
Mhm.
toxic to this person, and they don't understand why you are the way you are. So there's a lack of communication and conversation. So to furthermore, I think that I'm a long shot from where I think I want to be.
You want to be. Mhm.
And I think Shadia was asking at some point, she was like, yeah, but how do we make sure that other people are prone to learn, or they're prone to like understand and even talk about therapy, talk about going to therapy and stuff. Um, I tend to be optimistic in that degree where I feel like, um, hopefully we're talking right now, and every time I'm with another person, I really firmly tell them my opinion, and maybe in hope that it changes their perspective. And
Mhm.
then, but it's like one stone at a time, and I feel like it's gonna take the time that it takes. Um, but I'm hopeful.
Right.
We got some questions over there. I
Yeah, I
don't know.
think somebody was asking. So, were you saying that people put on an act to protect themselves?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's easier for me, and I'll tell you, it's easier for me to still continue to pretend to be a lion because I'm celebrated, right?
Hmm.
Honestly, I'm celebrated. Well, for the most part, as far as when we talk about feeling safe and protected, and talk about feeling like I can be the typical things, which is the provider, which is even in when we talk about um, all those things. But then it's harder for me to actually just choose to be the the emotional being that I am, and start to
Hmm.
talk about things, and start a journey where I'm like, okay, let me unpack, let me talk about these things, and without really having the tools to do it.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm lucky because I was raised by a lot of women, and I was around a lot of women growing up, and most of my friends are women. So I always say, if I can be more like them, I can be a better man, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely to protect yourself because it's
Right.
scary.
Yeah, but besides that though, how do you, if you are doing that to protect yourself, how do you sort of acknowledge the effects that it's having on other people or on a society or on a a culture like like Burundians, or even let me just call it on a community,
Right.
the people that you are close to. How do you recognize the effects if you are sort of protecting yourself?
Now, that's a very good question because you can get stuck in that cycle of
Hmm.
yourself and wanting your life to keep going as comfortably as it can. For me, I sort of look at the people that I cherish, and they have the women around me, and I think about I look at their experiences, and I
Hmm.
look at um, their past relationships, and I look at the things that they say, and I find myself in those people, right, in those guys that they talk about, because I find that I am as guarded sometimes, and I am as toxic, and things like that. So I would sit there
Right.
and look at my surrounding, and I would think, how can I want to be better for whoever comes in my life,
Hmm.
and I want my sister to find someone that is understanding, and that is listening, and that is emotionally available, so that they can grow into a beautiful, um, into a better relationship than what I'm hearing.
Hmm.
So I think it's a very personal thing. It can come in all forms, in all shapes, but
Right.
for me, it's really the impact that that has on the people that I cherish the most, and then it brings me to a place where I want to do better, right?
Yeah. No, I think it gets you to an impasse where um at that moment you start, I think you realize sort of your own personal development or transformation that's happening
Right.
within yourself, but also at the same time, if you are putting on that front, or if you are protecting yourself, you're also affecting other people, or let's say, young people who look up to you, or your friends, and in a way, you you're sort of being a double agent
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then you are promoting, or so you're condoning some of
Right.
those traits because you are putting on this front, but at the same time it's you're working on those things, and learning the traits that you're realizing.
Yeah.
um
Which which makes it tougher, I think. But also I'm a big advocate on being patient with yourself. So this whole work, and anybody who tries to do work on themselves is sort of like a long journey,
hmm.
because the unlearning process, man, it just kind of creeps up on you, like behaviors that you thought you had under control, but then you sort of like do something, and that reminds you of, okay, maybe I'm not quite there yet. Um,
Hmm.
but progress is there as long as you start the journey. I think that at least for me, I can sort of like tangibly see the progress from, let's say, 5 years ago to now, on my behaviors, which is as
Hmm.
simple as, hey, yesterday I reacted this way. um, I'm sorry. I I think I reacted this way because of this and that. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation, so that the other person understands. what happened, and you can
Mm-hmm.
communicate your emotions better. 5 years ago, I
Right.
couldn't. It was just like it happened. We move on. Not
Mm-hmm.
even asking myself how did it affect the other person, because I was still holding on to I got this. I'm I'm
Right.
I'm, I'm not emotional. I'm a lion. Let's do this. So, which when you think about it, it's a weird concept. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is. I think it is weird, and as Shadia was saying, this is something that's been happening for centuries and goes beyond just the self. It's a collective issue, but also individual at the same time. So it is complicated, but uh, it's making me wonder though. And this I might be getting philosophical on you. You may not want to answer this, but like, do you feel like, as somebody who is beginning to acknowledge and realize some of those toxic traits within yourself or behaviors within yourself, um, do you feel like you have a moral obligation to kind of shine the light, let's say with around your friends or your community, say, hey, like I've realized this and I've noticed this within many of the people that I engage with. Um, do you feel like at that point you have a moral obligation, or is it just like, I got me and that's all?
yeah, that's a good question because that can be tricky too. Um,
Right.
I think I think that I yeah moral obligation. The word obligation there kind of like it feels like it would stop my growth because then the shift will change to others and sort of like take away the inner work that I'm doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like a bit of a scary thing to think about because I don't want to be there. I don't want to be in a place where I forget that it's an internal thing and I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to make it external. But I will say that once you know your truth and once you know the things that you've learned and unlearned, it's very very the next difficult thing is to stand by it, right, and not to fall back in it just
Right.
because other people in the group still have the other mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it wouldn't be so like a moral obligation, but although it's more like I stand by what I've learned, and I think that's my truth, and I have to stand by it and fight for it, and hopefully that opens up other people's minds, and because I don't necessarily know or if everything that I'm saying is right for the other person.
Right.
I just know that the values that I implement in my life helps me and it makes me freer and better, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what the people. So it's in the songs, it's gonna be in the conversation, it's gonna be in the life that we do, and hopefully my hope is that I get more and more open to talk about things, and as I
Mm-hmm.
get more open, my friends around me can get more and more open. We can start having conversation as men that are not platonic, that are not, hey, you're good, that are not,
Mm-hmm.
you want a beer, that are really, how are you feeling? And
Mm-hmm.
they're feeling, right? So,
Yeah. Here I'm hearing sort of you have a moral obligation to yourself rather than to others around you. Uh,
yeah,
and sort of like the hope, that it's uh, the people who you interact with will begin to see that you are standing, you are standing for yourself, and you are actually staying true to what you believe or you have discovered or unlearned.
right, right. And it's all
Right.
sort of like you're trying to every day, it's like when you decide to, when you make a plan, you say, I'm going to go to the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning, Monday to Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The goal there is to try not to betray yourself and actually commit to the work you're doing because you know it's a good thing going to the gym. You know you want that. You know it's going to serve you beyond your years. But it's a difficult thing to do to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
your peers see you wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, then they might be like, hey, let's go together. Let me jump on that and see what exercise I can do that fit my needs and stuff. That's how I look at it. So as long as you try your best not to betray your own path and your own self self motivations, then you're making an impact either way, right? So
Hmm.
how I see it.
Yeah. So we have a question, a very interesting one. But I want to add to it. So in your opinion, how do you begin to unlearn those traits? Naomi here is asking, what is considered positive masculinity. So if you are choosing to unlearn something, it's because of what you're learning in the first place.
Yeah,
You feel like it's in a way it's negative, um, uh, but or it could it could be positive, or and you're sort of to go to something beyond it.
yeah.
So what is that? What is that goal that we're looking at that's not toxic?
I mean, it's just like that's a great question because I don't know, and I find myself kind of lost in it too. And I'm unlearning things, but then um, um, the girls that I'm after, I'm looking at to potentially be in a relationship with or whatever, they're still upholding certain things, and I'm like, is that positive? Like, do you actually want me to protect you? Is that a good thing? Is it
Hmm.
so? But then I think ultimately, I think the positivity of anything, I don't think it's necessarily masculinity, is just the ability to communicate your feelings and the ability to introspect and see how you're impacting the other person. I think that if you can get there, then then the negative will take care of itself. It'll go away. And
Hmm.
the positivity in masculinity is just having a partner that's themselves, like fully themselves without any addition to subscribing to what society wants them to be or
Hmm.
as in. So I guess that's the positive. If you if you go and meet someone um, who has done the work, who's a man who has done the work and who's willing to share a few things, and if not a few things, a lot of things, and you feel like
Hmm.
you can communicate, then it's positive, right?
Hmm.
Then it becomes positivity. But I will think about that question again.
Right.
It's a, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's one definitely for one to reflect and think about. And
Yeah,
I think from what I'm hearing, it's more of acknowledging and supporting or perpetuating or even advocating for gender mainstreaming,
yeah,
and acknowledging your place within that. Um, within that spectrum, but also as well as your place within.
mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it like sort of a fight or between genders, but uh, sort of acknowledging your
Yeah,
place and and practicing, the things that you're saying, you're having or you're choosing to stick true to. Um, and I think with it also comes with learning and asking questions. Because I
right.
think if it, uh, the term itself, has masculinity. So in order for I think for to understand that, then we also want to understand femininity and
Right.
how the two sort of kind of interplay.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And oftentimes, I
Yeah,
wonder what is what per se.
I was.
Yeah.
uh
So
And that's also a social construct in a
yeah,
way. Um,
yeah. I think you're bugging.
right. So we do have another question here. And now,
Yeah.
oh, I think you were also kind of pausing and stopping. I don't know if people can see us or hear us, well enough.
Mm,
Do you hear me?
I hear you. I hear you. You hear? Are you here? Can you hear me?
Now I hear you. Well, you're still pausing again.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Okay, good.
It's fixed.
Great.
Yeah.
To good method. Uh, yeah, so I had a question. Somebody asked, but
Yeah.
I also want to sort of get into that. And they asked, what is your advice to someone experiencing uh, toxic masculinity? I don't know if that's the right way to ask it, but I'm gonna ask, I guess, in addition to that, what is your message to other men in terms of acknowledging their toxic traits?
Uh, I don't know. It's really difficult because we have to assume that people are ready to acknowledge um, their weaknesses, their shortcomings, and willing to deal with it. It's like telling someone to go to therapy, but they're not ready for it and they don't want to. You know,
Hmm.
it's a difficult thing to answer. But I think that as soon as you start seeing that the person is wants to do better and wants to or is willing to listen to the other side and hearing the other side more than listening, but just hearing, um,
Hmm.
then you can start the work with them. I will say though that um, I never felt like it was the anybody else's responsibility to to deal with these things, especially not the women around me.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but I did feel an overwhelming support, and I would say just if you want to do the work, just look around, look around. I mean, I used to just sit there and see, just look at my sister's friends come here at the house, and they would talk, and they would literally go on rants and talk about their feelings and talk about the stuff that they go through. And when they're one on one, they talk about real stuff. So like
Hmm.
emulating and replicating what what our sisters and women are doing, I think that's a great start.
Hmm.
Meaning, because you get, it's almost like you now are exposed to different tools to express your emotions and let them out and talk about it. So I guess the answer is, it's if the person is willing to do the work, if you sense that they are, um, then you can be around them more and let them be around women more, and
Hmm.
and, and tell them the answer is around you, man. Like you because we don't have the ability to create that space between us, us guys. We held bound by these things that we have in mind. We can't give each other a hug. If a man gives a kiss, then it's like a weird thing for
Right.
some. I can't be as touchy as I am to another man if I was with one of my girlfriends. Not to say that I necessarily want to in that moment, but if I wanted to, why can't I? Like, why can't I hug my brother? Why? So these things prevent us from creating that space of openness. But
Hmm.
if you can start with friends and your all I'm saying is I think the women had hold some sort of answer and some
Hmm.
sort of guidance, right? Um, but it's our work to do, man. It's our work to do again.
Right. Yeah, no, that is a great way to kind of sum up what we were talking about. But I want to point out we have like 45 seconds
Oh yeah,
until this ends.
yeah,
Lance said to acknowledge your weakness is to know your strength and your limits. And I think that kind of sums up what you were just saying.
yeah,
Sort of like learning about yourself and acknowledging your surroundings.
yeah,
So I'm gonna bring back Shadia and to talk a little bit more about what you just ended with,
for
and we'll
sure.
see and bring you back within the next hour that we have.
Yeah. Peace, guys.
All right.
All right.
So don't go anywhere. I'm gonna restart this live, and we can continue the discussion.